Alright, Josh Rubin from East West Healing and Performance. Today I want to talk to you about amino acid therapy. We have all these health professionals out there reading books, popping amino acids, and thinking it's helping them. And there's a lot of leaders in our industry that are using amino acids and getting great results. The problem is what we're seeing, or what I'm seeing I should say, is because our society is getting sicker and sicker and sicker, and more unhealthy, more unhealthy, more unhealthy, it's not that easy anymore. It's like the typical client that used to come in 5-10 years ago was, my shoulder hurts, or I'm bloated. Now it's, my shoulder hurts, I'm bloated, I have a C-section, urinary incontinent, I'm on SSRI, I'm seeing a chiropractor, my hormones are imbalanced, seeing a psychotherapist, I'm unhappily married, I have toenail fungus, I have no libido, on and on and on. So we're seeing, a laundry list of symptoms, and what you're seeing is more and more supplements are being prescribed and people are trying to band-aid them. Now, I'm not against supplements. I'm against people overusing them incorrectly. Same thing with everything in our industry. I always pick on chiropractors and vegetarians. I'm not against anything. I'm just against how it's used. Because there are times when I work with people to actually quiet the gut down, maybe for a month, I will have them eat like a vegetarian. Not forever, but to create quietness, stillness in the stomach. So I'm not against anything, but today I want to talk to you about dysbiosis. Dysbiosis is almost like, having a balance, or I should say, having a balanced bacteria in the gut, anaerobic, right? Obligate anaerobes or aerobic bacteria, and having enough candida in the gut. It's a homeostatic balance. This balance creates homeostasis in the body. When you don't have this balance, you get dysbiosis. You get hyperpermeability issues like leaky gut syndrome, where food particles slip through the small intestine and overload the immune system, overload the liver and the detox system, and lead to a vast variety of symptoms. As well as you start to see issues in the large intestine, such as bowel toxemia. When you have all these compounds enter the large intestine, you basically produce toxic byproducts. So the problem with this is, when you get dysbiosis, taking supplements can actually compound the issue. It can make things worse. It's almost equivalent to, if you want to check, it's almost equivalent to checking like a smog check on a car. You hook whatever up to the muffler and they do a smog check. Same thing for the gut. You can do an organic acids lab. Now, a lot of you people don't do labs. I'm going to use big words. You're like, why the hell are you telling me this? Well, you don't need to know it. I just like to use big words. It just makes me feel good. So just listen to me. But the bottom line is, what you really want to learn is that if you have a GI problem, mouth, or even mental, because digestion begins with a thought. It stimulates gastric juices. So if you have an emotional issue, a mouth pH issue, an infection, stomach issue, small intestine, pancreatic, liver, gallbladder, large intestine, on and on, that's the entire GI system. If there's an issue with one of them, there's an issue with all of them. And you get kinks, deficiencies, excesses, on and on. So let's look at the simple chart. This is how your body works, per se, when you eat food. You can see the A, right? So A, right, uses, you can't see it, enzyme AB to produce B. B uses enzyme BC to produce C. And C uses enzyme CD to produce D. This is how things work in your body. You don't necessarily always need compounds and nutrients. You definitely need these enzymes and cofactors to still break things down and utilize them. That's why organic food is so important, because it has so many secondary compounds to help with this process. Now you can see this other one. This is a more dysfunctional one. So you have A. Well, if you have a deficient in enzyme AB, and I'm just making this up, these aren't enzymes, well, then you're not going to have enough C. And what's going to happen is, you see this A down the bottom, that's going to show up in the kidneys, liver, and into the urine. So you get this toxic byproduct because you have a kink in the pathway. The problem with that is, now you're going to see kinks further down the pathway with C, B, C, and D, and you end up with deficiencies. So that's how your metabolic pathways work. You eat stuff, you ingest stuff, you smell stuff, you break it down. You need specific nutrients to produce the next thing in the chain. Just like, for instance, an easy example we always use, or you've probably seen on, online, is, precursors. Like cholesterol is a precursor to pregnenolone, which is a precursor to all your steroidal hormones, right? Like DHEA is a precursor to estrogen. So if you don't have enough DHEA, you can't produce enough estrogen, and you produce metabolites. So the reason I'm putting this up, and I'm going to use some examples in big words, and I'll put them down the bottom here, is if you take amino acids and don't do proper testing, A, if you need them, but B, if you have some type of GI dysfunction, you could actually be creating more stress to the body and creating dysbiosis, overload the liver and the immune system, create hyperpermeability problems in the small intestine, bowel toxemia, and just compounding a small issue and making it a lot bigger. So if you want to take amino acids, L-tyrosine, DLPA, 5-HTP, L-tryptophan, GABA, L-glutamine, it's super important, and this is just my take on it, to make sure that you don't have dysbiosis. Now let me give you some examples. For instance, and these are on lab tests, so I'm using big words, so don't worry about it. Just listen to the general information and get the main point of, unless you know what's going on in the gut, don't take amino acids. And a lot of people say, well, I feel so much better when I'm on them. Well, that's great. But usually what I find is in the long run, they start feeling worse and worse, and they need more and more and more. So that's one sign. Some people don't have dysbiosis. They don't have a problem. They take them and they feel great. Well, it's great. Some people I've noticed, especially with L-tyrosine and L-tryptophan, I give it to them, and they just feel like crap. Well, we're creating a toxic problem. So let's look at some things in the body. For instance, you produce what's called benzoate and hippurate in the liver. So you need glycine, B5, and HCl, which is produced in the stomach, to actually, basically, break those down. So benzoate can produce hippurate, and hippurate can produce benzoate, on and on and on. Complex, but the bottom line is, if you don't have glycine, vitamin B5, and HCl, you can't make that conversion. So what happens is, and this happens, you can get this from packaged foods, fermented foods as well, but what happens is you're going to get this dysbiosis. You're going to have these heavy markers. Another interesting one is, for instance, you need, sorry, I'm just looking over my notes. If you want to break down DLPA or phenylalanine, you actually need adequate levels of HCl in the stomach. If you don't, you actually create a dysbiotic environment. Basically on your lab, you'll see an increased level of what's called HPA. That's hydroxyphenyl acetate. It's a long word, but you'll see increased levels of HPA. Another great examples is D-lactate. If D-lactate is elevated on a lab, that's actually a sign that you're overtaking probiotics, especially lactobacillus. And that produces D-lactic acid and produces dysbiosis and actually produces a systemic acidosis. Let me give you another examples. Looking through my notes that I got here. Succinic acid, S-U-C-C-I-N-I-C acid. Well, this is produced from actually unabsorbable, or you can't break down, L-glutamine. Well, you actually need enough B2 and enough iron to break that down so you don't produce the toxic byproducts or produce dysbiosis. Another important one that a lot of you guys know about is indole. You've heard of indican, right? Well, when you take in, L-tryptophan from foods, or you take it in from amino acids, if you don't have enough HCl from the stomach, and you don't have enough, or you have an absorptive issue in the small intestine from the villi, or there's issues with the microvilli, the bottom line is the anaerobic bacteria that is in the small intestine will actually eat up this indican and produce indole in the liver, and you excrete it through the kidneys, so it creates a toxic biomarker. So I'm running out of time, but I know some of this is actually a little bit deep, but the bottom line is you should never just take something without knowing what's going on. You can see how just overtaking probiotics can create systemic acidosis in the body, producing this D-lactic. You can see how taking tryptophan and phenylalanine and L-tyrosine, all these different things could create toxic problems if you don't know what's going on with the gut. So you get a couple options. First off, you can assess your gut, work with a health practitioner, or you can contact Metametrics, you can contact Biohealth Diagnostics, or you can contact me to do an organic acid lab with you to see if you have dysbiosis. And if you feel like you do, well, if you don't want to do a lab, don't take amino acids. Take the necessary steps to heal your gut. Then you can add in the amino acid therapy if you need it. But what you'll find by the time you heal your gut, you won't even need the amino acids, because most of them that you're actually looking for are produced, actually over 95% of them are produced in a healthy gut. So thanks for tuning in. I'm out of here. Stay tuned for another great YouTube. I'll check you later.